Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honour and it gives me great pleasure to say a few words on this occasion. An occasion unique to the Association of Jewish Refugees in the UK. Unique because it comprises the first unveiling, albeit a notional one, of an AJR plaque outside the United Kingdom. But it is, in our view, much more important than that. For the plaque records the actions of members of the staff of the British Embassy in Berlin and consulates in Germany and in Austria in the period leading up to World War II, when they arranged for and issued visas for Jews desperate to leave and to go to the UK, but who did not have the necessary papers entitling them to do so. Some of them are well known, such as already been mentioned, Captain Frank Foley, Robert Smallbones, Thomas Kendrick. There are others who are known, but there are others who have faded into anonymity. Those members of the staff provided those visas, albeit without having been authorized to do so by the British Foreign Office. They did so guided by considerations of common humanity, rather than by strict adherence to official guidelines. As a result, thousands of lives were saved, and those families managed to emigrate and indeed survive. We at the AJR and many individuals are therefore grateful to you at the Embassy and to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office for agreeing to the installation of this plaque. Citing it at the British Embassy in Berlin is hugely symbolic, especially so during the year of Germany's chairmanship of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. It is our hope that, as well as fascinating passers-by, the plaque will form a tangible link to the story of the refugees' escape from Nazism and the sanctuary they received in Britain. This plaque, along with others that we have in our scheme, will help to bring the past into the present and perpetuate the memory of the Holocaust.
Thank you very much, Frank. And I don't know whether the colleagues back in Berlin wish to add anything else, but we're enormously grateful, of course, to the ambassador colleagues for agreeing with that and announcing it, especially during this challenging, difficult times, whilst still respecting social distancing. So thank you very much, Ambassador.
We're doing our best at this end to respect social distancing, but I mean, it's sad in the way that we can't all be doing this face to face, but this is a very acceptable alternative thanks to some pretty amazing modern technology, and I'm very glad that we were able to organize this and do it. And it's a very fine plaque, actually. It's a very fine looking plaque, and it will catch people's eye, and it memorializes a very important episode. So I'm delighted that this has now been installed here. And I think
because we had, as I said before, we had integrated into the event, which is supposed to be a Q&A with Lord Pickles, the plaque unveiling, and I'm delighted that as well as Lord Pickles, we will also have Michaela Kuechler, who you heard there is the president of the IHRA, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, for this year, and we'll be posing some questions to them. We do encourage you through the chat facility here to ask questions, should you have any. We have got some lined up in the meantime, but please do use that facility so that you can ask the questions. There will be a range of subjects that we'll be covering today. And it's your opportunity to ask Lord Pickles about his role as the UK envoy for post-Holocaust issues, and also to Michaela about how perhaps the Holocaust is remembered and memorialised in Germany. So looking across the gallery of people who have joined us, I can see a number of AJR members primarily because we promoted this as an AJR members event. But for others who are perhaps joining for the first time, you will know that the AJR's primary role is as a deliverer of social welfare services, but the plaque scheme fits neatly into the work that we do outside of that, which is on playing a role in the advancement of Holocaust education and memorialization. And the plaques help, as Frank mentioned there, to perpetuate the memory of the Holocaust, the individual refugees, and also those who played a role in the rescue. And it also neatly segues and neatly bookends the events that we've done in the last week to mark VE Day, because of course, as well as marking the end of the war, we as an organization are marking the end and the defeat of fascism and Nazism. So I hope you enjoyed today's meeting, today's proceedings. So I'm delighted that our friend and colleague of the AJR, Lord Eric Pickles, the UK envoy for post-Holocaust issues, is with us today. It's somebody who the AJR has worked closely with in the last few years. And actually also with his predecessor, Sir Andrew Burns. And I'm also delighted that we had a prominent role in the creation of the post that Lord Pickles now fills. Lord Pickles, can I just start then by asking you your reaction to the unveiling of the plaque?
Well, I think it was a terrific experience to visit Germany virtually by courtesy of Zoom. I was a bit startled that it wasn't a blue plaque, but thank you for that explanation. But it's good, I think, to remember that there were some people at the beginning of Nazi Germany that recognized the evil nature of the regime, and despite not receiving that much encouragement from their bosses in London, decided to take action into their own hands. And we should remember that not every diplomat and civil servant is an exact servant to their country. They have a conscience, and they have an ability to do the right thing.
Yeah. And do you see that because perhaps we're at a sufficiently distant time since the end of the war, that we can celebrate those individuals? Do you think this would have been possible, say, a generation ago or in the aftermath of the war? It would have been a different picture.
Well, we know from records that the people that we are remembering are people that were regarded as being troublemakers, that the view towards appeasement of Nazi Germany went very deep within the Foreign Office and very deep within the British establishment. So they were not only putting themselves at some degree of risk, but they're also putting their future careers at some degree of risk. But we should, I don't know whether celebrate's right, but we should remember them, I think, with gratitude, and to demonstrate that just small incremental things can save lives.
Yeah. And this narrative about the role that they played, I know we'll touch later about the work of the memorial, the messaging that will come out of the Holocaust Memorial, but it's kind of getting to telling the story in its totality, that there were individuals who played this role, as you said, going against government orders, but without them doing so, there wouldn't have been the numbers of refugees who came.
Well, absolutely right. I mean, we're going to ensure within the Learning Centre that we look at all kinds of people, people who did the right thing, people that we actually can celebrate, but we're also be remembering people who didn't do the right thing, or people who went out of their way to cooperate with Nazi Germany, officials on the Channel Islands Mr. Orange, who managed to find more Jews than the Germans thought existed. We will remember decisions taken on the kinder transport, which denied parents coming into this country, and the fate of those parents who were denied entry into the United Kingdom. So we're going to do it on the round. And I don't think you can face up to the great evil of the Holocaust, of the Shoah, without understanding the nature of the people that perpetrated persecution against Jewish people.
Yeah. Michaela, I don't know whether you can hear us, or you've managed to go inside the embassy building. No,
not yet, I think.
Maybe they're on mute. Let's just check. No. Okay. Well, I'll come when she reconnects. I'll come back to her. But one of the, just sort of related to this, one of the I mentioned before about the marking also the anniversary of VE Day. One of the articles I read was about how remembrance of the war and how responsibility for winning the war changes in different countries. It may end up there's a different thought as to which country had the greatest responsibility, but I think we and Germany have something greatly in common in that there's huge culture of remembrance in this country, and you think about the number of statues and plaques and opportunities to remember those aspects of the history of the country. And I'm wondering about how this sort of fits into the national memory and the public consciousness, and how things like the plaque will help us achieve that remembrance culture.
Well, forgive me for repeating something I said, which I think when I've been at various events. Truth is that the memory of the Second World War and of the Shoah is about to be fundamentally re-examined. There are lots of books about the Second World War, lots of books about the Holocaust. But the fact is that once the last survivor goes, then there's a reassessment. If you think about our views of, say, the French Revolution, most of the textbooks that were produced in the 1850s largely has forged that vision. We've just been through the process of the First World War, where there are no survivors of the First World War, and there's been a fundamental reassessment taking place there. You know, for example, just slightly over 100 years ago, my grandfather, Edgar Pickles, walked out of a trench in the Somme and walked towards the German lines, and pretty soon many of the friends that he joined up with were dead. And but no one doubts that happened. But there is a serious industry out there that is looking to demonstrate that the Holocaust didn't happen. So we're not just in the process of commemoration, we're in the process of remembering and remembering the truth. So that makes it a little bit more, I think, a little bit more difficult.
Thank you. Michaela, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you, and I guess you can also hear me now.
We can much for rejoining us. I'm glad the technology is holding out. I don't know whether you heard the beginning of, before Lord Pickles spoke about the role of plaques and statues in general in creating a culture of remembrance. It's something that strikes me when I visit Berlin, as you do when you walk around London. They're abundant, and it forms part of the sort of public message, the national consciousness. And I guess the plaque on the building adds to that adds to those resources available to remember the past. I don't know what you think about this.
Well, I think it's a very valuable source, especially because the British Embassy in Berlin is in a street where there is virtually no traffic by cars. So it's a small piece of street which is open only to pedestrians and cyclists, which makes that people pass by much slower and with more attention than a normal car driver would. So I think it's really a good thing to have it at the British Embassy at this place, because it will raise attention of the people. They will start thinking about what has happened in the 1930s in Germany, in this place here in Wilhelmstraße, and and hopefully, because remembrance is not l'art pour l'art, remembrance is with a certain goal or a target which we have in mind, and that is to learn from the past for today. So if people pass by this plaque here at the British Embassy, then the best thing that could happen is they not only stop and read it, but they start reflecting about the situation nowadays in Germany and in other places.
Yeah, I know from what you and I have talked about, how the last couple of years there's been a lot of emphasis on remembering, for example, the Kindertransport because of the milestone anniversary. Are the roles of the people who acted as saviours, like Captain Foley and Robert Smallbones in Frankfurt and all the others, Kendrick in Vienna, are they known about, would you say, in Germany? Because it's a phenomenon. It's a particularly British phenomenon because they're British officials, of course. But are they known?
I'm afraid my answers will be very short. But I don't think they are known to a general public. To historians, yes, but hopefully the plaque will make a contribution to make them more known in Germany and or the others who helped people emigrate from Germany. Because that is a chapter. The Kindertransporte, I think, is a chapter which is now known to public, which is interested in history quite broadly. But the fact that there were people who were, as the ambassador said, bending the regulations in order to help people flee from Germany, that is something that is not so much known yet. And I think it's good that that the plaque is there, so this will help people understand that in difficult situations you must take difficult decisions and then go through it.
Yeah. Lord Pickles, again, I don't know whether you heard Lord Pickles mention briefly about the role in combating those who doubt historical facts. And of course, you both play a prominent role in the AJR. You, of course, Michaela, now as president for the year. And you've launched the Global Task Force Against Holocaust Denial and Distortion, which kind of says what it does there in the description. But perhaps you could say something about that work and the perhaps other plans for the chairmanship year.
Yes. Thank you very much for the question. Indeed, we want to put emphasis during that year, which started on March 3rd. We want to put emphasis on the aspects of Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion. The AJR has already 7 years ago developed a definition of what is to be understood of Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion. In German penal law, we have since the late 1940s, we have had a provision that makes you go to jail if you publicly deny or distort the Holocaust. That is not the case in many other countries, though there is a European regulation or directive that exactly asks European member states to do so, to make a provision in their penal law to penalize Holocaust distortion and Holocaust denial. This is something, of course, the IHRA cannot do. They cannot make laws, but they can raise awareness for these facts worldwide, because IHRA member states range from the United States through Argentina, over most of the European countries to Australia. So it's a pretty global organization with 34 member states. The IHRA can raise awareness for this. We want all IHRA member states to adopt at national level, and at national level, the definition of Holocaust denial and Holocaust distortion. And with the global task force, we want to exchange best practices in how to work against these two facts, these two phenomena.
And you mentioned there about the definition of Holocaust denial. There was also the working definition of anti-Semitism, and that's perhaps in this country how the work of IRHA, the IRA, came to greatest prominence. Perhaps not in the way that we had wanted it to, because it was quite delicate, quite political. But I think I'm right in saying, Lord Pickles, the UK was the first country to then adopt the working definition of anti-Semitism.
Yes, I've just been this morning in discussion with the Israeli ambassador to the UK as to when we got the definition in, and we in fact were the first in the world to adopt it, and much to my personal satisfaction, pipped Israel to the post by a few days in adopting it. So we were the first. And I think sometimes people make the mistake. They say, "Oh, we should make this legally enforceable." And in a way, it's the fact that it is not enforceable is a strength, because if it was legally enforceable, you wouldn't have one definition. You'd probably have 32 different definitions, because it will be amended by state parliaments. But it's there really to triangulate anti-Semites, to work against them, to use it in terms of proof for prosecutions, to get it in terms of training, to get it in as part of the scenery. And I think it's been particularly effective. I very much welcome this push towards dealing with Holocaust denial and instant rebuttal. And in welcoming Michaela, I think it could be well a landmark year in which we make a number of changes, because the Holocaust isn't open, it isn't ended. It continues because, as we know, that the various stages of any genocide, the final stage is one of denial, to say, oh, well, the numbers are exaggerated, or a lot of people died through influenza, and these various death camps were just transit camps and the like. So we have an obligation to nail the lies. But in a way, it's easier to be a Holocaust denial because you don't need to be exactly accurate. We always need to be accurate. We always need to be able to point to the facts. And that's why what IRA is doing is going to be so much important as we move into the next decade. This is a very good foundation.
Yeah. And Michaela, do you see other challenges for IRA, perhaps then beyond the chairmanship year? I mean, we're coming to this point soon where we touched on earlier that the dwindling of the first generation who will not be able to speak in schools anymore. Is there a legacy that you wish the German chairmanship to leave, particularly?
Well, before I come back to your question, let me first say a word about the IRA working definition of anti-Semitism. Germany adopted it in 2017, and it is what I would like to underline, that it is very important if a country adopts the AJR working definition on anti-Semitism to be aware that it includes all the examples also of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, which is disguised as critic of Israel. So that is very important. These are the modern forms, I would like to say, of anti-Semitism. And it is very important to keep that in mind and to be always aware of it in applying the definition, because only adopting it is good, but you need to apply it. And as Lord Pickles already said, it's good to use it in schooling for policemen, for teachers, for lawyers, for anybody who's in public service, in order to be able to detect anti-Semitism and to react accordingly. Well, what other challenges do I see for AJR? Well, we have this corona pandemic, COVID-19 disease, which causes a lot of harm to many people. Those who are affected the most, besides those who get ill, are Roma throughout Europe. They live in very difficult circumstances anyway, most of them anyway. And in the corona pandemic, their circumstances get even more difficult. And in many cases, they are being made responsible for expanding COVID-19 or the coronavirus. The AJR has been working for quite a couple of years on a working definition of anti-Gypsyism, and we would like to bring that issue forward, especially now in this corona pandemic, which shows us very clearly that the genocide of the Sinti and Roma has left this biggest ethnic minority in Europe in very bad conditions, where they have not been able to free themselves of. So this is something we would like to take away from our German chairmanship in this year, to decide on the working definition of anti-Gypsyism. And then, of course, we have to think about the younger generation. We have last year agreed upon rules for teaching about the Holocaust. They have been translated into most of the languages of the AJR member states, and now they need to be promoted through the educational authorities, through government and non-governmental governmental organizations, in order to be applied, so that we get the younger generations and teach them about the Holocaust, and especially get them with an emotional message, with facts, but also with an emotional message, so that they can bond with this very specific part of history.
One of the other big resources that Germany supports is the maintenance and the work of the Arolsen archives, of course. And for those who don't know, the Arolsen archives, formerly the International Tracing Service of the Red Cross archives, it's the world's foremost collection of documents bearing on the Holocaust. I think in excess of 50 million documents on 17 million people who were displaced during the Second World War because of Nazism. And indeed, the UK copy is held at the Wiener Holocaust Library. And of course, this summer, the UK will take over the chairmanship of the archives. And Lord Pickles, perhaps can I come back to you to talk about some of the plans that you've got for that year, that chairmanship year?
Well, we are currently the chairman of the archive, and we will be handing over to United States in June. So maybe I could just kind of outline one or two of the things that we've done. What we've been wanting to do, as you rightly say, we're one of the copy holders. And one of the problems that we've had is that people will come into, say, to the Wiener library and start looking for relatives, and other copy holders, say in the United States, people will look into there. As it exists at the moment, you can't see those searches. So in many ways, things that are happening in Bad Olsen or in London or in Washington, that we're blind to that. So this year we've been working with the Wiener to try and find ways in which we can bring those searches together, because even now people are finding long lost relatives and connections right across the world, and it's kind of a very valuable resource. The other things that we've been doing is that Bad Olsen is in the middle of Germany, not the easiest place to go. In order to extend the reach of this very valuable resource, we're working with an academic institute in order to set a branch office in a larger city, and we'll be making an announcement pretty soon on that. But you know, the resource of the actual archive, of getting it digitized, of getting it on the web, it's there not just as a collection of documents. In many ways, it's a living memorial, a pure demonstration that this evil thing happened. So it's been actually, despite the virus and despite the odd contretemps in terms of you know, finding a branch office and finding a link with an academic institution, we've had a pretty productive and successful year in the chair.
Thank you for correcting my timeline on that.
Well, it's like there was no way in which I could kind of pretend, but yes, but anyway, it's been a good time.
Yes, I was thinking also that it was very prominently displayed at the last AJR meeting in Luxembourg.
Yeah, that's right.
The exhibition on the items, so there are actual items in the archive as well.
Yeah, we're going to extend the use of these exhibitions and get them around various places, and we'll be, once everything gets back, we'll be displaying some of the archives in the House of Parliament.
Yeah. Michaela, I don't know if you wanted to add anything about the archives, particularly from the perspective of the German government. Obviously, the support that it gives is critical.
Well, I'm not an expert in the archives, but it's a very amazing institution. It's really, you can find everything there. I had been looking for about 30 years or so for information of my grandfather, who was an inmate at Theresienstadt, and I wasn't able to find something, even going to Theresienstadt. Well, that was shortly after the fall of the communist regime. Maybe they were not too open to provide one with information. But at Adolfsen Archives last May, I found something about my grandfather, and that was so. That's really amazing. The material they hold. It's not only pieces of paper, but it's also artifacts, and it's the exhibition they showed in Luxembourg, in Bad Mondorf last year, was very emotional, and it was really amazing what they still find out about relatives. And I fully agree with the current director of the archives, with Florian Azoulay, that it is necessary to provide more information about Adolfsen Archives through classes, through teaching, through learning, and therefore start opening a branch which would do all these things in a place which is a bit better accessible than Bad Adolfsen itself, which lies in a wonderful landscape, but which is a bit of a remote place. I agree with Pickles. And they're about to do a very remarkable job by launching this online scheme of enter a name. So they asked the online community to enter a name into their archives, and I think in the first week already they entered about 100,000 names or so in their archives. It's really an amazing organization.
Yeah, yeah. It's a curious place as well, located in the center of Germany, because of course, post-war, it's where the four occupying zones brought the documents to be collected over the years, and it's now mushroomed into this extensive resource. We have only got a few minutes left, and I just want to remind people listening in that this is an opportunity. If you had any questions for Michaela or Lord Pickles, please do send me. I've got a couple here that I'll get to in a moment. Can we just turn to the subject that adorns Lord Pickles' background, the memorial, the Westminster Memorial? Perhaps Lord Pickles, can you update us with the progress and where things are?
Yeah, we're at the stage shortly before a public inquiry. It was due to start in May, but because of the virus, it's been put back. We're in a very advanced stage for preparation for that inquiry. I'm very confident that we will get permission in the end. The memorial itself, underneath, will be a learning centre, and that will deal with Britain's reaction to the Holocaust and subsequent genocides. So we'll be looking at things like the Kindertransport, the liberation of Belsen. We'll be looking at anti-Semitism in the 1930s, and we'll be looking at people who went out of their way to save Jewish people, and we'll look at people who went out of their way to ignore what happened to the Jewish people. We'll be looking through the eyes of what happened in the Chamber of the House of Commons, and we'll be looking at the way in which some of the threads of the Holocaust were subsequently taken up by subsequent genocides. And we're in a pretty advanced state of putting this together. We've had a lot of help from the Imperial War Museum, from Yad Vashem, and from the American Holocaust Museum.
And obviously, from personally and from the AJR, there's been extensive consultations and debate around the memorial and where to locate it, and the siting and the learning centre and so on. Has that been bottomed out, do you think? I mean, are we moving to the stage where this is when this will be announced? Is that pretty much where we're up to?
Well, obviously, it's subject to planning, and it's not been without a degree of controversy. There are some people who don't like it, don't want it in the park, but we certainly feel that it will enhance the park. It will enhance the local area, and by and large, the number of people who support it far exceeds the very small number of people who are opposed to it.
And Michaela, you obviously would have been following the debate here. Are there any echoes of when the Denkmal was created? Obviously, they both are going to occupy prestigious locations in the centre of a capital. Is it a very familiar set of discussions and conversations?
Well, there was a really broad discussion. I think it was for more than 10 years before the Denkmal for the murdered, the monument for the murdered Jews of Europe could be built in the heart of Berlin, just right next to the Brandenburg Gate, which is a very prestigious place in Berlin. Yes, and indeed, it echoes a bit. The discussion we now see in London, it echoes a bit what we have seen here in Berlin. So the role, of course, of the German state and of Germany in that history is a different one, as we all know.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know if it's fair to say, Lord Pickles, it's the nearest equivalent because it's the monument above ground, and then of course the learning resource centre, place of public education, nothing else underground. Is that fair categorisation, do you think?
Well, certainly, I think the Berlin monument is very effective. But the thing that really galvanized my thoughts was the history of the Jewish people at Auschwitz. I think block 20. I think it's block 27, and you sort of going there, and you're sort of overwhelmed by an audio-visual display. I mean, we've taken the decision not to have any exhibits itself. There's going to be nothing in cases. But what it will be is an explanation of what happened in audio-visual terms, and that way we'll be able to keep the learning centre fresh, and we'll be able to vary what is seen according to particular times of the year. But it will start. You go down a series of things downstairs, and it starts with the Belsen and the liberation of Belsen. It starts with Churchill's view of the Holocaust, and then you move through a series of rooms, including a mock-up of the House of Commons where debates took place, and ending with a void in terms of what was lost, leaving to future action. So it'll be quite I think, a powerful monument. It's a relatively small learning centre, roughly the size of the Berlin memorial downstairs. But the people from both Yad Vashem and from the Washington Memorial reckon, because of its location, it's likely to be one of the most visited memorials in the world.
Right. And earlier this year, the AJR was working with the Foundation Stones organisation. Members were dedicating personal mementos, personal stones to loved ones. They're going to form part of what people will see. Is that right?
Yes. So,
no?
Yes, we're going to ensure as part of the foundations and part of the display, these stones will be shown. It's been a wonderful way of involving not just Association of Jewish Refugees, but also in terms of involving various schools around the country, various universities and various community groups. And it's certainly caught on. Natasha Kaplinsky has been one of our ambassadors around the country for this. And I have to say, if I'm being really honest, I've been quite surprised at the reaction and the sheer number of people who've wanted to participate in this. And I think it's an example of, you've always got to think of new ways of involving people in terms of understanding the effects of the show. And I think it's been a very inventive way of doing that.
Yeah.
And it's likely to be the forerunner of other projects.
Yeah, and of course, on a very personal level, it's a way of the people connecting directly to the site and leaving personal memories of individual people. I want to just capture one other big subject, of course, which is the effectiveness of Holocaust education. I'm not sure we're going to do it justice in a few minutes, but the UK was one of the first countries to have a dedicated piece of research into the impact of Holocaust education a few years ago. And obviously that's informing the work of the IRA delegation, and government continues to fund education. I think from the outside you could look at it and think it was tended to be, the headlines were tended to be quite negative around the success of it. Do you see it the same way? How do you see the impact, the effectiveness of Holocaust education? And then I'll come to Michaela and ask you the same question.
Well, I think it's in terms of getting a message across, we need to kind of understand that Holocaust education is variable. Where it's done extraordinarily well, I think it's very effective. If it just involves, say, a teacher bringing a copy of Schindler's List, playing it and leaving the class, then it's not so terribly effective. But where it is effective, it makes quite a difference. Now, my old constituency, Brentwood and Ongar, I always used to say that if I'd organised a visit for Jewish people within my constituency, they could have all come round to my house and I wouldn't have run out of crockery. So getting an understanding of what it means in a community that has no real experience of having Jewish people as neighbours is quite a big thing. And as part of that, the funding that we have for sending children to Auschwitz, pupils to Auschwitz, seeing the effect on those pupils coming back, talking to their school, getting themselves involved, becoming ambassadors for the Holocaust Education Trust is quite something. So I think Holocaust education done well makes a difference. Done half-heartedly or not really properly thought through or being, slightly reluctant in terms of doing it, then it isn't very good.
And do you think, maybe an unfair question, do you think that's resources, or is that an attitude of people, or where could it be improved?
Well, we have put in, the government has put in, all governments have put in quite a lot of resources. It's expensive to send 2 pupils from every secondary school a year to Auschwitz. It's been extended to student leaders. There's terrific work done by Anne Frank. There's terrific work done by the Holocaust Memorial Day Trust. So it isn't about resources, it's about application, about good Holocaust education. I think you referred to that study put together by UCL. I thought that was a real eye-opener. And I think the lessons of that have yet to be properly rolled out. So I don't think it's resources, but it is an attitude of mind. We've seen now with various periodicals and various books about the Holocaust that have been kind of put out, that sometimes it's you're getting a kind of homogenized view of it. You think about the boy in striped pajamas. You think of the tattooists of Auschwitz. I mean, and this thing that we've just seen on Netflix, purporting to show Jewish workers finding ex-Nazis. That's another prime example of a distortion of history. The Holocaust was horrible. You don't need to exaggerate. And it goes back to the point I was making earlier, is we have always got to get the Holocaust correct in facts. We can't allow it to be distorted, because those who seek to deny the Holocaust will pick on inconsistencies.
Thank you. And Michaela, what's the view from within Germany? Perhaps you could share how prevalent Holocaust education is in Germany, how the system works. I think people here, many of whom would have come originally from Germany, would be interested, of course.
Well, as far as schools are concerned, we have the authority for curricula in Germany does not lie with the federal state, but with the 16 individual states. So in Germany, we have around more than 600 books, history books or sociology books, who have 1 chapter or 2 pages or 2 chapters on the Holocaust. So this is about the schools. But we know from surveys that young students having left school, when you ask them, have you heard the word Holocaust and what does it mean? More than 2/3 would say no. around a third would say, no, I don't know what the Holocaust is, and I've never heard about it. So it seems that education about the Holocaust is not very effective. I think what it needs and what is very invaluable, that is the testimony of those who have survived the Holocaust, who become fewer and fewer. And I'm very grateful to organizations just like the AJR, who do film the testimonies, who do video the testimonies, and who put them on the internet so that teachers can make use of them, because this is something that really touches young people. So that is a very good source. Then, of course, like what Pickles mentioned, visits to concentration camps like Auschwitz, but there are many. Unfortunately, there are many others. Well, today they're not concentration camps. Today they are memorial sites. So this is a very important element, and I think it's a thing of lifelong learning too. I mean, once you leave school, you may have heard in school 2 or 3 or 4 occasions about the Holocaust. In Germany, it's being taught, I think, for the first time at the age of 11, 12, then 14, 15, and then again 17, 18, and that's about it. And I think it's very important to build on that, what you have learned during your school years, during your university studies, during your education as a policeman, during your education as a lawyer, as a doctor also, because think about medical experiments that were made in Auschwitz and other places. So I think it's very important to keep that aspect of lifelong learning in mind. In Germany, you also have organizations like the Anne Frank House here in Berlin, who do courses about the Holocaust in jails, in prisons. So this is something that is quite interesting too.
Yeah, thank you.
And I think we can learn from each other, like always.
Well, that's the real value of IRA, the network and bringing organisations together. And I must say there are other projects, international cooperation, that not only AJR but other members of the delegations are members of, that cooperate in research, and it all adds to the enhancement of the field of education and remembrance. What I'm really stretching our limit in terms of the technology, and I've just one final question, which is really about the current crisis, and that's for a number of years. One of the projects the AJR has been supporting is organisations that are developing virtual interactions with holograms and virtual testimonies. And in a way, the COVID crisis is the sort of introduction to that, because of course people are not able to meet physically, and so Holocaust education continues. And I'm just wondering whether, I don't know whether you see this as sort of continuing. We've always said for many years that there's nothing will replace a person being in a physical room with a group of students. But I assume I know in UK that's happened. In Germany, does it continue like this, Michaela? Are there meetings of students with survivors on Zoom and so on?
Actually, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. No, I don't know whether there are meetings on Zoom or other platforms with survivors. I know that there are many meetings on Zoom and other platforms, but if there are meetings with, yes, there was one last week on the 8th of March, on the 8th of May. AMCA organized a meeting with 2 survivors in Israel, which was streamed online directly on YouTube. You can still see it on YouTube. So there are, I guess there are meetings with survivors which are streamed online, and of course we have the archives of the US Shoah Foundation. We have the material from the AJR, which is available here and which can be made use of by teachers and by other educational institutions.
Yeah, I don't know, Lord Pickles, do you?
Well, I don't think. I mean, we're about to have an IRA meeting in June, which will be via Zoom for obvious reasons. And we will of course be able to get the business done, and we'll go to the formal thing. But what I will miss is that most of the business of AJR is not in the meetings; it's in the networking before and after meetings and those informal discussions. There isn't a chance we would have got the AJR definition of anti-Semitism through the formal meeting. It was the side meetings and the discussions and the cajoling that got it through. So it's no substitute for doing this proper. But I do think that Zoom and Team and all these kind of things are likely to become a proper feature of what we're doing. Now, we've had an opportunity of talking to Michaela this afternoon. We would have all had to have kind of travelled across to Germany. She would have to have come across to do that. And I do think this kind of deliberation does mean that even when we're able to meet people, we are going to be able to keep in contact with colleagues who are many miles away, and I think that will enhance the experience. I mean, you've become quite a techo wizard today, Michael, and I see a great future opening up for you in terms of keeping us all together on Zoom.
A compliment from a lord. That's made my day. I mean, I'm actually surprised I've been able to multitask, both listening to you both and trying to field the questions. So anyway, thank you very much, both of you. It's a really fascinating insight into your work, your joint work, your individual work. Michaela, I'm so glad that you could be physically at the embassy to be part of the special unveiling today. I was going to try and risk one more technical feat, which was to display an image of the plaque, but I'm not going to risk it and then fail. So you're just going to have to go over to the AJR's website, our Twitter page, our Facebook page, and dare I say it, also the AJR journal, the printed matter, which still continues, where we'll have a picture for everybody to see. And failing that, we'll just have to somehow go all over to Berlin for another version of the unveiling in person, maybe later this year or next year, when things hopefully will be a bit easier. But for now, just want to sign off by thanking Lord Pickles and Michaela Kuechler, and for everybody else joining us. I know the critical thing when you have a Zoom meeting is everybody wants to know, yes, but how many people were here? Well, I can share with you that at the peak, there were over 115 participants, with some people sharing screens. So a fairly good number were able to join today. And look out for future events that we're putting on. And in the meantime, stay safe, keep well, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you all very much.